Hello and welcome to the OKPreps Extra Show. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Barry Lewis. Barry, I have to tell you, we're recording this the day after the elections, and this election cycle has worn me out. So I am so glad to sit here for 20 minutes or so and talk a little high school football for you. It's always my favorite part of the week, but I'm even more so looking forward to it right now. No pressure on you. You always bring the goods, but I'm just saying, really looking forward to it. How you feeling? What's going on?
Feeling excited about uh, week 10 coming up, finishing off the high school football regular season. A lot of great matchups and a lot of playoff positioning to be decided. And that's what I love about high school football, that it's all decided on the field. You don't have any committees determining which teams are going to make the postseason. It's all on the field, all the matchups determined by the teams themselves. A lot of great games scheduled this week, and we'll see what happens. Playoffs are 1 week away.
I know it's just, and we talked about this last week. The season just goes by so fast. So it's exciting that we're in week 10, but man, it just feels like it blew by in an instant. So this week is important for several teams, and we're going to talk about a few of them. Let's start with Broken Arrow. What do they need to do this week, Barry?
Broken Arrow still 1 win away from totally clinching a playoff spot. So they just need to win. They've lost three in a row. And if they win, they're in. If they don't, then they might be out. If they win, there's a possibility they could host a first round playoff game. Uh, so that would be so huge for Broken Arrow. And I think the future of that program, if it can win and host a first round playoff game. This week they're playing at Westmore, and Westmore is having its own struggles. They're trying to get in the playoffs themselves. They've lost four in a row. So you've got Westmore, which has lost four in a row, Broken Arrow, which has lost three in a row, and the winner's absolutely in, and the loser might not be. So it's a huge test. It's a huge moment for both those teams. I think, especially for Broken Arrow, with all its history, they really need to get in the playoffs. They barely got in the playoffs last year. They've got to find a way to get in the playoffs this year if they want to make sure they've got some momentum going forward in the future of that program. They've got to also find a way to stop opposing offenses. They've given up 59 points on the average in this 3-game losing streak. So they've got to get that figured out. And I think this is a good opportunity for them to get that figured out because Westmore's got its own problems. So huge game for Broken Arrow. They've been consistent on offense. They've scored exactly 28 points in each of the last 3 games. But they've just got to get it together and get a win this week. So a lot on the line for Broken Arrow.
You going to pick BA or you going to pick Westmore?
I was tempted to pick Westmore, but I'm going to go with BA. I think BA is the better team. It's just befuddling to me why they're in this situation.
And of course, you picked, not to point this out, but I will point it out. You picked BA last week, and it was the only game you missed. You were 14-1 in the Tulsa World pick. So sorry to rub that in. You almost had a perfect week, Barry.
Thanks for reminding me about that, Patrick. But I will instead dwell on picking Berry Hill, the only one on the panel, I believe, who picked Berry Hill over Claremore Sequoia.
Yep. Well, if we're going to point fingers, I'll point one at myself because I'm currently in last place in the picks. So, I can point fingers at you, but I'd love to be sitting where you're sitting in the standings. What about Owasso? They are top ranked and undefeated, Barry, but still a big week for them. Tell us why.
Yes, I think for Owasso, which is going to host UConn now, this is breaking news. Just learned this before we started taping that they're moving their game from Friday to Thursday due to forecast weather. So, but anyway, that's breaking news. Owasso hosting UConn. It's a game that looks like it should be a mismatch on paper, but UConn just is coming off a win over Edmond Santa Fe, which almost beat Owasso 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So you never know. I mean, the way the last two Owasso games have gone, they've gotten the job done. Give them credit for that, absolutely. And the teams they played, Edmond Santa Fe and Norman North, as we've talked about on this show, they are a lot better than their records indicate. But still, the way Owasso had gone through their first 7 opponents just steamrolled everybody pretty much. You didn't expect them to have such a tough time with Santa Fe and Norman North, and especially the defense struggling. So to help them going into the playoffs, there's nothing really on the line for them this week. They are the district champion, so that is set. But besides wanting to wrap up and complete a perfect regular season, that they want to go into the playoffs. You'd think they'd want to go into the playoffs with a lot of momentum, coming off a solid, really good, let's get back to Owasso football type of game, because they're going to have a bye week next week. So they're going to have a couple of weeks to think about this or to reflect on this game. So you think you want, from an Owasso standpoint, you want to go into the playoffs on a high note. So that's what their challenge is against UConn now on Thursday night.
Let's stick with 6A1 and talk about the Union Redhawks. Big game for them.
Very big game for the Union Redhawks, as second place is on the line as they host Edmond Memorial on Thursday night. That the winner finishes second and the loser finishes third. And if you finish second, get a first round bye, and you're at home in the quarterfinals. If you finish third, you're playing in the first round. And if you advance, then you're on the road. So the stakes are high. Shaker Rysick for Union, he is on such a tear. I mean, that's got to really, the passing game is on such a tear. Shouldn't just say it's Shaker, although he obviously leads the offense. But the whole passing game, wow. Over the last 2 weeks, over nearly 900 yards, and Shaker has thrown for 14 passing TDs. That's playing like the number one quarterback in the state, which some people say he is. Although Bird Ficklin at Muskogee, his supporters will say otherwise. And right now we've got them 1 and 2 in the all-world rankings, because Bird has just had such a sensational season after being the all-world offensive player of the year last year. But when you're a Boston College commit like Shaker is, these are the type of performances that you expect a player of that ability to do. So we'll see if he continues to do that against Edmond Memorial on Thursday night. It's interesting. He didn't play against them last year. He was out with an injury when they met. But the year before, he came up with he delivered what had been, until the last couple of weeks, his best ever statistical performance in his career against Edmond Memorial. So that may not bode well for the visitors on Thursday night.
What has Union done to get hot on offense these last couple of weeks? As you mentioned, Shaker's putting up video game numbers.
I think it's more of a matter of just getting adjusted to everything. It just, I think, took some time to get used to being without Jarek Wadey, who was lost after the season opener due to the unfortunate shooting. Thankfully, he's fine, but not having him, because he was such a big part of that opening win. You saw what ability he has as a receiver. That was a big loss, and I think they were just really shook from that. It just took them a while to get rolling again. And also the complementary parts of the offense. I think the running game was struggling too for a while. And if you can't run and then you have to pass all the time, then that's a problem. And now both areas of their offense are clicking really well. And also in a couple of weeks before these last 2 weeks, they were focusing on the running game. They didn't really have to throw very much anyway. So the last 2 weeks, it just seems like everything is coming together for Union, and that's got to be exciting for Union and its fans, as it looks to maybe surprise some people in this year's postseason, because, there's been a lot of pressure on them the last 2 years because they've had such great regular seasons, and they were, I wouldn't say they were the favorite, although some may have. Well, myself, I had them as a favorite 2 years ago over Bixby. But expectations were really high in the last 2 years that they could win a state championship. Now, I don't think anyone's been looking at them as a state champion contender, as maybe as a contender, but not. Most people are looking at Owasso or Bixby, understandably, to win the state championship, and so Union and Jenks are sort of under the radar. But that's when they can be most dangerous. So maybe this will be the year where Union surprises some people in the postseason, because it's probably, if you ask the schools what's been the most disappointing teams in the playoffs last couple of years. Union, I think they would admit, losing two tough semifinal games the last 2 years. They had such high hopes. They feel both those semifinal games they should have won to at least get to the championship game. So maybe they just sneak in under the radar and get to the championship game in a year when no one has been really expecting it for the most part.
Yeah. Yep. Good point.
Like Jenks has done. I mean, Jenks has done that a few times under Coach Keith Riggs. Everyone will ask, "What's wrong with the Jenks?" And I'll say, "There's nothing wrong. They're in the state championship game."
Yeah. It's, you got to think any one of those four teams that you just mentioned would be, could be in the state finals. And it's kind of hard to hear that, like Jinx and Union under the radar, but they kind of are to a degree, like you just pointed out.
I think Jenks, I think, is used to being under the radar because they've had some slow starts in the regular season in recent years, but yet 5 of the last 6 years, or 5 of the 6 years that Keith Riggs has been head coach, they've been in the championship game. And that is pretty impressive. And I think most of the year, everyone's thought, oh, it's going to be Owasso and Bixby. And but now Owasso in the last 2 weeks has shown, hey, they're looking vulnerable. Bixby is back to being Bixby pretty much. But if there's a year where Bixby might not make the championship game, this might be it. Even though they are still really, really good, they're on an 8-game winning streak. I don't think they're quite as good as they have been the last 2 years. So if there's a shot to knock off Bixby, this might be the year. So I think I think things are fairly decently wide open in 6A1. I think it's really weird to say that after how well Owasso's played in Bixby's dominant dynasty, but I think it's pretty open among those top 4 teams.
Yeah. All right, let's drop down to 3A, Barry, where Berry Hill has a pretty good game this week. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, I always love when it comes down into the final regular season week, when I've just finished doing all the playoff scenarios, which you can find on OKPrepsExtra.com, about 70 inches of playoff scenarios for every class. And those even self-edited a little bit. I could have gone even more into detail, but that would have just taken forever in some districts. But anyway, after doing all those district scenarios on if so-and-so can win a championship, if such and such happens, to all these other teams, I like it when it's really simple. Berry Hill hosting Cascia-hall. The winner's the district champion. The loser's the runner-up. It's that simple. There's no marginal points thrown into the mix. No 3-way tiebreakers. It's really simple. Winners first, losers second. And so that's going to be fun. You won't have to do scoreboard watching when those teams play this week. And I think it's a great quarterback matchup. You've got Berry Hill's Connor Payne, who is the all-world the Reader's Choice as the preseason all-world quarterback, the only non-Jenks or Union player to win one of the position honors. And they are 6-0. Basically, they're 6-0 with him, and they were 0-3 without him. He makes a difference. Really good quarterback. And Barrett Mullen at Cascia-hall has just rewritten the Cascia-hall passing record book, having a great year. So what a fascinating matchup that is. So many talented players on both sides of the ball. I'm looking forward to that matchup. It'll be my first time to see Berry Hill in person this year, or in a couple of years. I think it's been a couple of years since I've seen Berry Hill in person. I've seen Cascia-hall already. So just a really interesting matchup.
Which game you going to Thursday?
Thursday, weather permitting. I am going to Edmond Memorial at Union. And again, I say weather permitting as the time we're doing this show. Owasso's the only game that we've heard of that has moved. And sometimes when one team moves, because the forecast of weather, then a lot of other teams start moving. So pay attention to OKPrepsExtra.com or contact your school to make sure that the game that is scheduled for Friday night, as most of them are, is still being played on Friday night. But we'll keep you updated on OKPrepsExtra.com.
Barry, let's talk a little cross country. Some local schools and local runners had a pretty good state meet
What
last
a
weekend.
great state meet it was for the Tulsa area, because you had the Owasso girls three-peated in 6A, and Bella Nelson wins for a second year at the individual championship. And then Bishop Kelly swept the 5A titles. Bishop Kelly's Gwyneth Myers won the girls' individual title. And then you had Lincoln Christian sweeping in 4A. And then you had cascia-hall girls winning in 3A. And Regent Prep captured 2A boys. So what a great weekend it was, or a great Saturday it was at Edmond Santa Fe for Tulsa area teams in cross country.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Barry, anything else on your mind, or shall we leave it there for this week?
Well, looking ahead next week, besides the state football playoffs starting, then we've also got signing day on Wednesday. That's always an interesting day. That's for all the sports except football. And then the football early signing day is only 3 weeks after that. So it's a crowded sports calendar, because you've got football playoffs starting on a signing day, starting on the same week as signing day is next week. And then you've got this year, the early football signing day, the day before the state championship football games. So that's a lot. It's a lot going on.
That's a lot. That's a lot. All right. Well, I appreciate the reminder on signing day. It always, the non-football signing day always seems to sneak up on you. So we'll be covering that and do what we do on that. All right, let's leave it there for this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Patrick Prance for Barry Lewis. We'll be back next week and we'll preview the playoffs. Talk to you then.